largest rail merger in the world, also known as the world-renowned World United Railroad Company. It is the combination of the Rendelian Federal Railroad, the European Railroad, the Almelian Railroad, and the Noten Imperium Railroad, and finally, the Sudrian Railroad of Felucian. These mergers of these railroads keep the flow of these countries' economies wide open and free for trade after the recent major AH War ended a year before. However, there will be a disaster that will cause the end of this large rail merger. After the AH Rail's war was ended, millions of men were discharged from the army after suffering mental disabilities from the European fronts, African fronts, as well as the North American fronts. Such countries as the Sudrian Union, also back then called the SSSR, the European Federation Army, the Rendelian Army, the North American Front, also known as the United States of AH Rails. While as the Imperium was taking a less part during the war, it still had to pay millions of recollections after losing millions of battleships during the sieges of the seas were owned by the Sudrian Union. Most of the casualties during the war was blamed by the European Federation and the SSSR during Operation Saint Gratude, which was the operation to abolish gratuidism, the first ideology of the Sudrian Union since its revolution in 1956. Even after the war, lots of repairs though had to be done, as railroads from the Sudrian Union to the Noten Imperium and the European Federation all needed to be repaired so they can resume regular passenger after war services. As you probably guess, there needs to be a change, and that change will come by next year in 2023. The starting of the idea of merging the entire world's railroads started in 2023 in the beginning, with the Sudrian government agreeing the merger plan, which was the plan to merge all railroads in Asia, Europe, and North America into one railroad. However, the plan only works if someone joins the plan. And the project got abandoned after only 3 months when it was acted, until 2024. A British railway company known as British Railways looked at the plan and the history of it and decided to make their own plan in May of that year, with backing support with the Rendelian Federation government as well. In August of that same year, the Sudrian Embassy and the Rendelian Federation to reunite the Sudrian Rail Merger Plan. Throughout 2024, 2025, and 2026, the Sudrian Rail Merger grew up to be connected to all the railroads across the world, such as Almelia, the Noten Imperium, and the United States of AH Rails, joining this 3 months after the Rail Merger Plan was put into action. On August 2nd, 2026, a Russian L-class number 6647 was heading out of St. Gratudeberg. The engine was taking the Sudrian Limited, which is an express journey all the way to St. Gratudeberg, all the way to the capital of the Noten Imperium. Meanwhile, at Haxford Junction outside St. Gratudeberg was a Manalian class 6052. A old steam locomotive that was used in the Noten Imperium, and behind it was a GNR class D52, a Japanese variant of the D56. Both services were running 2 days late. As previously yesterday, a storm ran through, causing the 2 trains to delay 2 days until the tracks to the main lines were completed. However, nobody even knew, especially the person who was running the box on that day, didn't know that the King Edward I was returning from its previous journey across from Russia to Alaska. And to add more confusion, a goods train run by our old Russian O-class was heading back after picking up a goods train heading to Königsberg, which is a part of St. Gratudeberg. Moving back to the Sudrian Limited, most of the people who were on the trains were veterans from the AH War, such as Sudrian soldiers, European Federation soldiers, and Redalian soldiers, and the northern states of AHL soldiers, who were arriving to a reunion to celebrate the 3rd anniversary of the war's beginning. The train, which was the Millennium class is hauling, is a standard passenger train that goes through the capital of the Philippines, also known as Manila, all the way to Vienna, as the D-56 is using it as a backer engine for an extra locomotive. The Russian O-class was carrying chlorine gas, which is being used for a new invention at Königsberg. The signalman had to think of a way to get all these trains halted to let the Sudrian Limited pass, since it's the first train that passes through than the other trains. First, he dealt with the Filipino services. He put the train on a down loop, told them to halt until the Sudrian Limited passed. Then he put the Russian O-class onto the down main track. But suddenly, there was a problem. The switch that switches the points to up main to up loop had jammed it, causing a big nasty curve on the side. The left switch was completely busted. King Edward I's head-on collision exactly at 5 a.m. in the morning. Following with the crash was the Russian L-class who was pulling the Sudrian Limited. The Sudrian Limited crashed into the Filipino passenger train, Millennium 556. The coaches of the Filipino train were crushed instantly by the heavyweight steel Sudrian coaches, crushing the passengers instantly. The leftover remains of King Edward were found in the beneath of the tankers, which he fell down onto the track. It was burned beyond recognition as well. A fire soon spread onto the locomotive, which was a switcher nearby, which caught fire when it was hit by one of the tankers, murdering, killing veterans and Filipinos alike, as well as Europeans. When rescuers arrived, they seen dead bodies remain of the veterans of the AH War, as well as other people being burned and sharded, and among them were children alike, from different minorities from everywhere across the earth. Soon after the incident, the Sudrian government soon started an investigation with the NTSB, and what found it was shocking on the left end of the track. The switch that changes up main to up loop was not working properly due to the electrical problems on the switches, which also caused a lot of problems on Sudrian railways at the time. The NTSB could have questioned the switchman on that day, but he was The yesterday storm did delay the entire both services, and if that storm didn't happen, this would have never happened. Also, if King Edward was alerted to be at the box on that day, the collision may have been avoided. However, 10 years later, the Sudrian government, under the permission of the Rendelian government, shut down the rail merger, causing the entire free trade plans that were about to happen all halted and dismantled. And the rest of the plans of the rail merger of its futuristic were all burned by both governments. Both governments have agreed that this merger would have failed from the start, especially of all the problems. May never know what were in those files, but the gratude collision would have been avoided if miscommunication didn't happen with King Edward. In the end, King Edward I was scrapped and 10 tankers were scrapped, as well as all Filipino and Sudrian coaches, which were burned beyond recognition. In 2033, shortly its 100th anniversary, the Sudrian Union, the Kingdom of Almelia, the United States of Rails, known as the Northern States of America, the Northern Imperium, and the rest of the Peace Coalition, France, and Sudetenland, all joined it to commemorate the people who have died in the gratude collision. Even years after the gratude collision, many still people are affected, especially the Sudrian Union, who is now still making their railroads the safest railroad, which became its record in 2066 is the number one most safest and biggest railroad in the world. However, we still have to learn from mistakes from the gratude collision through human error and miscommunication. Ha 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 ha! Fooled you all. I am the Emperor.